Dust off your back, don't look back. Give all the dollars, you know, a fake heart attack. 'Cause you were made for this. You can feel it inside your bones. You were made for this, and it's time you let the world know who you are, what you know, it's happening right now. So
Great, perfect. Thank you for the introduction, Rich. As Rich mentioned, my name is Thuyen Nguyen, and I'm a mobile publisher advocate for Google Admob specifically. I'm very excited to be here today. So what does being a mobile publisher advocate really entail? Basically, we're here to encourage developers to continue to create good content and to be able to build sustainable businesses off of the content that you are creating. I've been in this industry now for about 10 years, and it seems like year after year we keep on hearing, this is the year for mobile, next year is going to be the year for mobile, and now it feels like the year of mobile's almost peaked and is almost beyond us, but I personally don't think that that's true. If you look at this graph here, you can see that there's still a ton of opportunity that's available. Out of the 5 billion phones out there in the world, only 20% of them are actually smartphone enabled. And I guess the stage is too big, but you can see that Indonesia is kind of towards the long end of that graph. In Indonesia, smartphone penetration is only at 14% at this moment. But what we are seeing as well is the countries with the lowest smartphone penetration are actually the countries that are growing much more quickly in terms of smartphone growth. So countries like Indonesia and India are outpacing, and actually a lot of other countries in APAC are outpacing global worldwide averages when it comes to growth in smartphone adoption. If we think about the population of just India and Indonesia alone, the second and the fourth largest countries in the world, we can only imagine the opportunity and the ecosystem that's going to develop here. We could even look at the US and China to see the possibility of what India and Indonesia can become within just a matter of years. The great news is as users adopt smartphones, their consumption behavior changes. So what we're finding is the longer that a user has a smartphone, the more time they actually spend in apps. And the latest stat that I've heard is that users are spending 3 times the amount of minutes on apps than they are on the mobile web. So if you're here, if you're a developer, if you're a startup, and if you're looking to get users and looking to get mind share, and you don't have an app strategy, then I would definitely reevaluate your product strategy overall. Now, as user consumption behavior changes, advertising dollars will follow. You can see on this graph as well that just in 2013 alone, most regions experienced over a 50% increase in advertising ad spend. We expect that this is only going to grow over the next few years as more advertisers realize the value of apps and follow users where they are. But all that really is the future opportunity and the growth of this industry and what it can really become. As an app developer, where can you actually make money today, and how can you actually build a sustainable business today? If we kind of look at eCPMs worldwide, this is internal Admob data, we actually see that not only does North America and Europe have the most users on smartphones, they actually have the highest eCPMs globally as well. So as an Indonesian developer, if you're looking to maximize your revenue and maximize the opportunity for growth, considering global users is going to be very important for now. But globalization and localization doesn't have to be daunting. There are over 200 countries in this world. You don't have to reach every single one of them. It can be very simple, and it can be simply done by just reaching the top 5 languages. By reaching the top 5 languages, you actually can reach 70% of mobile internet users. If you were only to create a product in only Bahasa, you would be reaching less than 17% of total internet users. Now, this is also internal Admob data. If we look at the average Indonesian app developer today, 68% of their revenue is coming from a global user, but also the international RPM or ECPM, or revenue per mille, is 57% higher. So for the amount of effort that you're putting in to get a user, if it's the same amount of effort you're getting to get an international user versus a local user, the ROI on the international user is going to be much higher right now. And even knowing all that, even knowing how important localization is and reaching the global user is, I'm actually really surprised to see this stat, which is 1/3 of all users have experienced a poorly localized app. So what happens when a user experiences a poorly localized app? They uninstall the app. What's really interesting about this stat and the research that we got this from is that even if a user considers your app to be a brand quality app with great features, 18% of those users are still going to uninstall your app. If it's a poor quality or poor featured apps, 30% of those users will definitely uninstall your app. So what Admob did is we partnered with a research firm called Parks and Associates this year, measuring smartphone and tablet users in over 5 countries: US, UK, China, Japan, South Korea. So some of the highest penetration and most sophisticated smartphone user markets. And we took a look at their consumption behavior to understand what is important to reach these users. The first step really in preparing your product for reaching the global market is something that's called internationalization. So what this is setting up your code base so that it can be ready to accept and host different languages, different strings of code for different languages, so that it can be sent to localization. Localization is the actual practice of translating the words and the culture and the feel of your app so that it can be dispersed to global users. If you are unsure about where to start with localization or internationalization, android.com/developers actually has a whole section on localization and where to start. They even have example of ad code of how you can actually set up your app and your ad code to be ready for localization. So I highly recommend checking that out. Now, in general, I would say that it is always prudent to look at your own analytics and to look at your own data to decide where, how, when you're going to localize. But if this is your first time launching a new product or your first time actually going into the market, these are just some of the general metrics that we recommend looking at. So it could really be as simple as who has the biggest user base that you want to target right now, or which user base and which target audience actually has the highest potential revenue. And if you're an Android developer, at Google I/O last year, we launched the Apk Translation Services. So this is actually available in the Android developer console. It contains translation services that is pre-vetted by our marketing team of all different costs. Some are free and some do cost money, and they do range in prices, but it's up to you to kind of find the right service that works for your product. What I'd like to do now is, instead of actually just going over the localization best practices tips, I'd like to take a deep dive into the gaming vertical to see what this can look like in action. First and foremost, before localization, users really care about gaming features. Users care about the user experience. Users care about the value that you're providing to them. So remember that even if you have a great translated app or localized app, and you don't have a great product, that's not going to work. But I also said earlier that if you had a great product without great localization, that's also not going to work. And what we've also found is for the majority of users, with the exception of China, brand is not important. So if you're thinking about going through a distributor or publishing with another brand who has a bigger name, maybe that's something you should consider in doing the actual research of what's important to users and how to actually reach them in those markets. And as I just mentioned before, brand is not important in most countries, but China. So China users really do care about brand. So if you do have a great app, how are you going to distribute it? Distribution matters depending on the locale that you're going to distribute to. In China, you may probably want to publish with a known brand. Also, in China, most users download their apps from other sources besides the iOS and the Google Play Store. So being present in mobile carrier stores, being present in the operator stores and the manufacturer stores can help you to also reach users more effectively. It's not your user's job to find you. It's your job to be present where your users are. Context of the way that your game or your content is used is also very important. On a smartphone, people are usually out and about. They have 5 minutes while they're waiting in line. They're on the bus, they're commuting. And most people, when they're on their smartphone, prefer to interact with games that are more transactional. So puzzle and trivia games where they have 5 minutes and it's a level by level interaction. As opposed to tablets, where what we found is tablets aren't actually a very mobile device. People do carry them and take them around with them, but most people use their tablets in their homes. So when people are in their home, they're relaxed, they have a lot of time, they are more likely to engage with an action and adventure game. So they're more likely to also spend on in-app purchases, and they want a fuller and a more rich experience because they are on the tablet, and the tablet does have additional capabilities to provide them with that type of experience. Now, I almost kind of want to put this slide kind of in the forefront, because in working with most developers, what I find is monetization is really an afterthought. It's always, well, first I'm going to build this great app, and then I'm going to get a lot of users, and then I'm going to try to get that VC money, and if I don't get that VC money, and then maybe I'll start thinking about ads. But if you're creating a product, what you really need to do is think about the 360 of that product, and monetization should be at the forefront of the planning stage as well, because monetization can actually affect the way you distribute, it can affect your pricing strategy, it can even affect the type of products that you can come out with. What's interesting here is that more users will actually pay to upgrade from a free to paid app, but when you're looking at gaming users, 85% of their revenue is spent on in-app purchases. So if I'm spending $100 on my app experience, $85 of those is going to go to in-app purchases. So what I kind of draw from this is that the lifetime value of a customer is going to be very important. If you're a transactional company, if you're selling an app that you think a user is only going to pay for once and they're not going to use very often, then maybe that 99 cents is that lifetime value of that customer. But if you're going to create a product where users are going to engage with on a daily basis for months, for years at a time, then you really have to look at that engagement rate and look at their cost or their value per engagement to analyze or to estimate the lifetime value of this customer. pricing strategy, as I mentioned, can also be affected by where you're actually pricing your product. With China, Chinese users actually report that they make more in-app purchases than all other users, but you can see here that they actually spend the least. So that tells me that if I'm going to price a product in China, I'm going to price very small items at very low prices. Versus if I'm going to price in Japan, I'm probably going to create content bundle packs, price them higher because Japanese users are more likely to spend more money, but they're going to make in-app purchases at a less frequency. And what kind of stuff do your users even like? This probably should come as no surprise to anybody here. Asian users love to personalize their characters. They love to personalize their avatars. They love avatars. We love icons. We love all of that, whereas personalization may not be as important to a Western consumer. And with all this, we're finding that the majority of users are actually still not engaging in any type of monetization model. So if you speak with most game developers, what we found is in the industry, about 85% of users are never going to make an in-app purchase. As a business, to run your hosting fees, to pay your developers, to continue to invest in your business, how do you actually monetize the 85% of those users? Ads. I know this sounds weird coming from Admob, but the fact is, one of the biggest hurdles that I face every day in talking to developers about their monetization strategy is that they think that users don't like ads, or they think that ads are a very disruptive kind of experience within their own app experience. But the fact is, users actually don't mind ads as long as they do not interfere with the user experience. So this really reinforces the idea for me that if you are thinking about monetization, if you are thinking that ads is a possibility, this needs to be at the front of your product design, and this needs to be incorporated into your product design so that you are not interrupting that user experience. You're not slapping an ad on a beautifully designed app that's going to cut off any work that any of your designers have put time into. Users even have an opinion about the type of ads that they want to see and the type of ads that they want to engage in. So what we found is, on average, 29% of Asian users prefer personalized ads. So ads that are using some sort of personal information like browsing, shopping, preferences, and going to serve an ad based on those preferences to those users, whereas Western users are very hesitant about privacy, so they want contextually targeted ads. Contextually targeted ads are ads that are related to the content that they're viewing or engaging in at that time. So if I'm playing a puzzle and trivia game, I want to see an ad that is a puzzle and trivia game. I don't want to see an ad that is going to be about e-commerce or about retail. So I like to just close this up and bring all these things back together. The app business is not a set it and forget it business. The startup business is not a set it and forget it business. I was actually at GDG Jakarta yesterday, and there were a bunch of students in the audience, and one had asked me, so how do I prevent failure? I want to minimize my risk of failure. I said, I've got a solution for you. Don't even try. That's the only way that you will not fail. But with the app business, what you'll also learn is maybe the first time that you launch your business, or the first time that you launch your app or any business, it may not take off right away, but it's up to you as the owner to make sure that you have great analytics. You're looking at that data, you're looking at that user engagement, and taking that feedback from users to reincorporate into your product designs, reincorporate into your next pushes and into your bug fixes, and be able to actually make a product that users like, make your users understand that you're listening to them so that you can actually create loyal and engaged users. For me, there are really two types of app developers, and really the only difference between them is that a successful app developer builds a product for users. An unsuccessful app developer builds a product for themselves. Because if you love what you build, that's great, but if nobody else loves it, then they're not going to use it. I'm going to wrap this up with just two quick case studies on the power and the effectiveness of localization. So Say Hi Chat, when they first launched, they only launched in Chinese, Japanese, and English. And what they realized is they weren't getting traction in many other countries. So they localized to 13 additional languages, immediately saw an increase of 120% in their installation rate, and saw a 20% increase in revenue. What was also interesting about this case study is they swapped out their bad Spanish translation for one that was done professionally, and they saw an immediate increase in user installs and engagement in the Spanish market. Second is Zombie Ragdoll. So they actually worked really closely with our Google Play team, and they immediately launched in 20 countries. This is not their first app, and they're not a new app development company. But as a result of launching in 20 different languages straight away, they saw downloads in countries that they have never seen downloads before. And they were in the top of the App Store in Thailand, Poland, Vietnam, and Russia as well, which was something that was completely new to them. And once they actually gained that traction, they went back, localized their other apps, and were able to promote those apps to that same market and to that same user base, because now users were already familiar with their business. And I'm going to close this with something that Admob is actually launching next week. Can I get a show of hands to see how many of you here are actually students? Or are most of those students in the, oh, fantastic. Most of them are probably in the hackathon. But we really believe in investing in new developers and encouraging innovation and encouraging great content. So what Admob is doing is we're launching a global student app challenge where we're encouraging students to submit their apps by May of next year. All you have to do is identify a business problem, create a solution to it, integrate ads in a way where it is not disruptive to the user experience, or integrate it in a way where it actually looks great and works great with your design. And the winner of this challenge will get an automatic feature in the Google Play Store. You will get $20,000, I believe, in advertising credit and a trip for 5 to San Francisco to visit our product team and meet the Google Play team. So that's it for me.